Welcome back to this Learning Matters special, where we're discussing the financial crisis facing school districts across the Susquehanna Valley and across the state. We're now going to turn the discussion over to the leaders in education here in the Susquehanna Valley. I'm joined by Dr. Cybil Knight Burney, Superintendent of the Harrisburg City School District, Don Bell, Superintendent of the Northern Lebanon County School District, and Dr. Cynthia Burkhart, the Executive Director of the Lancaster-Lebanon Intermediate Unit. So let's start the conversation by talking about the financial crisis, the challenges that are facing. And let's start with you, the Harrisburg City School District. What is the biggest challenge facing your district?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is what do we cut next? Harrisburg City School District has embraced the idea of cutting costs for over the past 2 years. We've cut about $23 million off of our budget, which is about 30% of our staff. So we have downsized. We've cut major programs like our pre-K, and we've increased our classroom size. So those all bring significant impacts to education. So now we're faced with the cuts in kindergarten, looking at our athletics, looking at continuing to enlarge the classrooms, and even looking at extracurricular activities, our specials, our music, our computers, our art. So those are the types of discussions we're having now. What next is the priority, and how do we go about justifying it?
What next? From the Harrisburg City School District, we turn to a different kind of a school district, a more rural school district. Don Bell, you're with Northern Lebanon County. So what are the challenges that you're facing?
Well, they're very similar, and that's the unique part of this. It doesn't matter if you're a urban rural school district or in between. The challenges that we face are the same, and I think it's important to say it isn't just this year's budget crisis. It's multiple years of budget crisis, and it's decreased money each year that it comes along. So what do we look at? Well, obviously personnel, that's the key. The teachers in the classroom are the ones that make the difference with the kids. And then on top of that, when you start to decrease the number of teachers, you're going to look at increased class size. You're going to also look at programs that are going to need to be cut, programs that are going to need to be curtailed. So what do we look at first? We curtail programs, but we're past that in last year's budget. We're now looking at cutting programs. Students will not have availability of textbooks, they're not going to have availability of smaller class sizes, and they're not going to have availability of tutoring sessions and things like that to help them as individual students to be able to provide for them what we need to provide. So I think it's key to say that it doesn't really matter where your school district is located or what size it is impacting every single one of us in the same way. And it's also key to note that it isn't just cutting that takes place, we also have to have revenue increases. So when taxes are raised, it isn't as if districts aren't doing anything about it. We are. We're cutting and we're raising taxes.
So there's a lot going on in school districts, and a lot of this is impacting students. Dr. Burkhart, you work with the school districts in Lancaster and Lebanon counties. What are you seeing across the board with the districts that you work with?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Ann, I have the opportunity to work pretty closely with all 22 school superintendents in Lancaster and Lebanon counties. And what we have seen is, as demonstrated already by our two superintendents here, is they all have the same common problems. There was a time when we would look at the city school districts, such as the Harrisburgs and the Philadelphias, et cetera, and say, well, those are urban districts and we're never going to have those problems. My fear is that we've got a sleeping public. They don't really understand that these budget cuts are at their door as well. And I believe that it is those communities that will wake up when it's far too late. We are seeing cuts in places that we've never seen cuts before. And I'm going to tell you that I really foresee a time that if things continue the way they're going, you're going to see people have to pay for kindergarten, for example. There's mandatory, compulsory attendance at school at age 8 in Pennsylvania. Our school districts do not have to provide kindergarten. They're already looking at, if they have extended kindergarten, they're already cutting those programs. They're cutting the pre-K programs. They're cutting in areas that research says that's where our dollars should be spent best, because they're not compulsory.
So these cuts are impacting your students. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. In addition to that, Ann, I think people need to understand that some districts have the ability to raise their taxes, their property taxes. So that will give them a little bit of wiggle room or relief, we can say. But in Harrisburg, only 49% of the property tax is accessible, and even with that, we know that 25% of that only belong to homeowners. So we even have less of an ability to have extra monies come into the district. So when we look at that, it's like, so where's the equity in all of this? And as Cindy has said, all of the districts are feeling the brunt of it. When we were meeting last week with our intermediate unit superintendents and our urban superintendents, one of the things that we discussed was the collaboration and how can we come together and work together more efficiently in trying to just deal with our cuts, even if it's just meeting and just talking about the commonalities that we share, whether rural or urban.
We don't have much time, but I want to touch on the one point. What can be done? What do you want people to take from this as to the challenges that you're facing, and what can be done to help?
Well, I want people to become educated about the issue. I really want them to understand what these cuts mean and how they impact the classroom, how they impact each individual student. That's most important for me. And with that, to be able to advocate intelligently about the issues, to advocate what we need and what's important. And that's our basic education.
Let me move down the line.
Most definitely, you've got to get involved. You've got to get involved with contacting the people who are making those decisions in the legislature as well as the administration. And even from our perspective, don't just believe what we say. Go out and research it and look for it for yourself. And in the same way, don't do that from the legislature's standpoint. There's a lot of data that gets thrown around and a lot of people say a lot of things. It's most important that people get involved to look at the things themselves, go on the district's websites, go on the PDE websites, look at what's actually being said, but also look at what's actually being done. Get involved and understand what is actually happening. And what can be done, contacting people continually. And do not be relentless in what you do. We are getting relentless cuts. It's time for parents and grandparents to be relentless with the people that are making those decisions.
Absolutely.
I'll let those be the last words. Thank you all for joining us.